Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you're joining us over in Europe or in the UK, or maybe good middle of the night if you're in Australia or Asia. So thanks for joining us today. We've got another one of our OpEx webinars, and this one we're going to be talking about operational excellence in sales operations, and we have a really great guest who's going to deliver some slides and talk to you guys about what she's learned as she's gone about applying this stuff. Just as we've still got, the first few minutes of these webinars, we've always let everyone sort of finish joining. We've still got people getting on. So while that happens, we'll just click through this stuff. There's a picture of me. That seems harsh on the audience, and my name is spelt wrong. That's awesome. Moving on. Next month, we've got Kyle Kumpf on. So Kyle works for a banking sort of organization I think it's in the Midwest, and he's pretty active with this stuff, and he's going to jump on and talk about some of the projects he's done in the banking industry, and that'll be another good episode for us, and another sort of different industry for applying OpEx. So that'll be the October episode. Just a reminder that we've got one more live training event coming up this year. It's in Anaheim, so it's basically Disneyland. You need to go and see Mickey. And that's we've got a 3-day manufacturing track and 1 day dedicated to the office as well. So those are really great classes, and we've had a lot of people come that have been on these webinars, and it's great to meet you all. And if you'd like to chat about that, by all means, just get in touch with us via LinkedIn or send us an email, however you like. Educational webinars, we've got a couple more coming up. We've got Kevin presenting one on the 11th of September about sort of operational excellence generating business results, not just sort of waste reduction and factory transformation. That'll be a good one. Then I think I'm doing an office overview on the 22nd of September. That's just a general office overview. So it's not, there's no guest or anything. That's just going back to basics, going through the theory that's in our book. So if you haven't been on that one before, it's a good one. And then you can see Kevin doing a manufacturing one at the end of September. So lots of those coming up to provide lots of cool education for everyone. And now we will get on with the good stuff. So today we have Jane Brogan joining us. So Jane is in the UK, so you'll have an Australian and a Brit today. And she's, you can see her bio there, but Jane runs a customer service organization for a very large industrial company. And so Jane deals with, distributing the products, selling the products, account management, dealing with those internal relationships. So having to connect to the manufacturing divisions and then, continue those connections onto the customer. So really sort of complex sort of place to be. She's sort of in the middle between customers and the manufacturing organization. So it certainly provided some unique challenges. And Jane and I worked together 2 or 3 years ago now. And I know that, she's continued this effort and done a lot with it. And I believe her organization, her customer service location won the Lean Award for their whole corporation the year of their implementation, which was cool. So I am going to hand it over to Jane. So I will make her the presenter. Please ask us questions as we go along. There's a questions bar there, so you can tap questions in. We'll pause along the way and take some questions. And, we'll try and make this as interactive as possible. So now I'm going to give Jane the screen. Again, don't forget to ask questions. And Jane, have the screen, and you are welcome to get going.
Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my screen. As Tim said, I'm Jane Brogan, Customer Service Manager for a large operation. I put my face there not because I like it, but just because it's nice to know who's presenting to you. So that's why my picture's there looking at you. And I'm just going to talk to you about how we created a lean culture here. It's not a technical piece at all. I'm going to go through a bit about my background, a bit about the company, our mission and journey locally. I'll touch on the guidelines and how we applied them. Then we'll talk about results, and then I'll just summarise some of the key elements that enabled our success here, and hopefully that'll help you with any of your transformations moving forwards. So, Tim's covered some of my background, but just to say I started out in retail sales, so have an understanding of sales and how we as an operation need to support growth in the business. Project management, spent some time working for an organisation managing big projects, so I understand how to manage through to the end results. And then, as Tim said, 20 years in sales office management and operational leadership. In the past, we've had quite a lot of success using traditional lean techniques. But actually 3 years ago, I noted a book on my manager's desk at the time, which was the Design for Operational Excellence, and just kind of thought, okay, this is coming into our organisation. So I ordered the book. I think I read it in probably about a week. And the thing that jumped out to me most of all was this leapfrog approach to operational excellence. So we'd always worked with continuous improvement techniques, and the operational excellence piece really changed my philosophy. And I think, I don't know if I'm making this up, Tim, but I always remember the piece about the choke on a car. So, 20 years ago, when I got into my car, I was messing around with the choke, trying to get the car started. And if we'd continued to improve that choke system, I always think I wouldn't be now driving around at the weekend in a battery-operated vehicle, which actually drives and parks itself. So that really changed my philosophy and my thinking. And now everything we do, we think about redesigning rather than continuously improving. And again, as Tim said, we actually got an award here, not for our technical capability in terms of lean, but actually the way we changed our culture. So that's really what this presentation is about today. Excuse me. So again, Tim touched on the organisation. We have quite a high volume of clients that we're working with. The inputs for the purpose of this presentation is orders. So orders come through to the middle, which is us. We manage the order entry and the processing of the orders, which go through to quite a number of manufacturing locations. And then there's information flow coming back from the manufacturing locations to the sales company back out to the client. So we're managing around about 45,000 order lines a month, which is quite high volume and with a variation in terms of mix. So that should give you an idea of what we're dealing with. So one of the things that was important for us was to have a clear mission statement, and that mission statement was to design an internal sales growth structure with clear segmentation, optimized flow and visual indications, ultimately achieving operational excellence. There's a number of reasons around that. One is to ensure we're not inside-out thinking, so we're really thinking about supporting the growth of the company. But the clear segmentation was around, with those 44,000 lines a month, there's different behaviours by different customers, so we wanted to segment that behaviour so that we could see the flow and the visuals more by type. So our journey really began when actually Tim came in and trained our leadership team, which is where the book came from. So I saw the book on my manager's desk. And that was a great thing to do, because if the leadership team have got that understanding of the concept and the model, then they can support any change programs moving forward. We then kicked off a Kaizen, including the leadership team and a number of managers throughout the business. But really the benefits started to come in when we trained all of our people, so everybody could understand what was coming. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on. Once we got the people trained, we chartered the team. So we made sure that each team had a clear goal and an output, and they were given boundary conditions to work to. So they didn't have to continuously ask us, could they do X or Y, but they knew they'd got the support if they needed it at the back end. And then we made sure that we'd got 90-day plans to execute. And really the benefits came from training the people, chartering the teams, and making sure they'd got clear, supported plans which drove that inclusive environment, individual ownership. So it wasn't just managers telling people this is how we're going to work, it was them coming up with the redesign. And then, of course, we got the cost of poor quality reduction, which overall improved customer experience. There was productivity gains. We managed to put guaranteed turnaround times in place. The demand from the customer was visible, and we had measurable response times, so we could actually see whether we were meeting our customers' expectations. So we got some really good results from that.
Hey Jane, while you're on that slide, knowing what I know about your chartering process, you guys, can you talk a little bit about how important it was to give the teams a really clear charter, and if you would link those execution plans to those charter, or during execution, was it helpful to be able to go back to a really well-chartered team and have that strong alignment around the reason for doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all of the things that we talk about are the basics, really, but it's just to make sure that the scope is absolutely clear at the front end, because often we run into doing something and we get scope creep, and projects become so big that they fail. So yeah, the key was really making sure the scope was clear, making sure that the results linked to the business strategy, and the most important thing for me was having the teams engaged. So as I said, it's not just a manager telling them this is what you need to do. So they felt more connected to the overall results of the business. Does that kind of answer the question? Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, and I asked because you guys always did a good job with that, like really connecting it so the people doing the project, they really understood why it was important, and it wasn't just to be lean, or it wasn't just to be, to improve. It was to achieve some result that was defined in that charter, and it always just seemed to keep them, I guess, more energetic and focused. And the funny thing about you was there was always a clear, and I remember it surprising me at the time, but you'd walk around that floor and say, why are you doing this? And everyone could immediately spit out a really simple, concise answer, which was cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, you should keep going along.
Yeah, I mean, you hear at times, why are you doing this? Because my manager told me to, and it's
yeah.
not sustainable, is it, when that happens? So yeah, it was really just empowering people once they understood what was expected, so that they could get on and feel great, and that's what makes you successful, isn't it? So
yeah.
So yeah, so we trained everybody in terms of the 9 guidelines. Obviously, I'm not going to go into detail on them, but actually TACT, which is one of the guidelines that you assume everybody understands what it is, but it's incredible how people don't, even highly trained people. So we made sure that they understood that it was purely about the customer demand rate. But actually what we found useful as well, because of the volume and mix, was the TACT capability piece, so that we could understand what we could do to satisfy customer demand at the front end. Number 2, continuous flow. yes, we understood about that. The ones that I've circled are the ones that really helped us to be successful in the results that I'm going to show you. FIFO, we know about first in, first out, but we learned more about how to size the lanes when you've got a number of workflow cycles through the process. But the first guideline that really stood out for us as a business and for the people was the workflow cycle, the timed intervals that work flows through the department. And Tim, I don't know if you remember the lady who, you know, as soon as we trained her, it was like, can I do that? I want to do that straight away. And really, can I put a flag up and my manager can't interrupt me because I'm in a workflow cycle? So that was so powerful. Really, really good. And if we hadn't trained the people, which a lot of businesses don't do, we wouldn't have had that input and people getting excited about changing the way they operate.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we were kind of offering them just a nicer, less stressful, potentially even shorter day at work, and they were pretty keen on it.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it was a very powerful piece, both for the business and for the people. Integration events, I think those are powerful. We've not really used integration events to capture knowledge at one point, but I'm pretty sure we can in the future. The standard work piece, we always had standard work, but really the value for us was thinking about TAC capability and what your TAC mode 2 would be if you have changes in demand. So we learned quite a lot about how to operate outside of the standard demand. And then number 7, single point initialization, one entry point. So we always had orders and, you know, other types of work just flowing through to lots of different points. So that was of real value to us. And then pitch as well. The pitch piece was quite good to train the people on because it was all about checking the process and not the people and removing that management dependency. So that worked really well. And of course, how to manage changes in demand. That 20% where there was abnormal demand, we would either extend the workflow cycle or a colleague would hop on and support. So yeah, without going into too much detail about the guidelines, it's again really training the people. It helps them to understand why you're making these changes in the business. So I've just got an example here of one of our smaller Kaizens, and we've done a lot of work outside of this. This is our order entry Kaizen. I've not added the current state because the current state was just lots of volume coming into lots of different entry points, no FIFO. It was kind of looked quite dysfunctional. So we applied a number of the guidelines. One was tax capability, so we understood what we could handle, and of course how we would flick into mode 2 if the demand was abnormal. So, and that was to extend the workflow cycles. We obviously put FIFO in. We had that single point of initialization, and then the sort of blurred picture there is screens that we put onto the wall. So everybody would plug in their capability by type, and then we would be measuring the demand of the customer, so you'd get that on or off pace signal, and the people genuinely knew that they needed to support each other. And you'll see at the top right, there's a quote there from one of the employees, and they was kind of saying, we now have visibility of the daily demand and where we have capacity, so they can address problems without management dependency themselves. And most of all, they had that time, that sacred time to focus on their work, which was great. They just pop a flag up, I'm in a workflow cycle, don't interrupt me. So they got that sacred time. So as a result, we managed to reduce the lead time we had a guaranteed turnaround time, so we had 2 workflow cycles in the day, which gave us a 4-hour guaranteed turnaround time. The teams had the sacred time to focus, which then resulted in error reduction. And of course, we'd got that visible customer demand as well, and that worked across teams. So there was boards all the way through the office, and you could see where we needed to move resource around to accommodate that additional or abnormal demand. So that worked really well for us. So the result was obviously the overall, the year, there was a 15% productivity increase. The bars were the after we'd done the work, and the line is prior to the work. So obviously at the front end there's quite a high productivity increase, but what we weren't able to do is bend and flex to a decline in the number of order lines coming through. But generally there was a 15% productivity increase across the year.
Hey Jane, we've got a couple of questions coming through on a few things you just said. So Joseph is asking, he's sort of commenting on what you said about training your sort of frontline team members, and he's saying that his organisation provided a bunch of training to the sort of frontline, but he's struggling with middle management and upper management. I don't know if you had that situation where you didn't have good support, but did you feel like you hit barriers with any of the middle management or upper management along the way? I'm not sure if that was a big deal for you.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's actually at times it can be. I think the senior leadership they want all these gains, they want all these improvements. Of course, they do. It's typically the kind of frontline managers who perhaps feel like they're already doing a great job, they don't need to change anything, which is why you've got to get the people trained, and that's exactly what we did. So I don't know if you remember, Tim, but one of my questions in one of the earlier meetings was, how do we get this across the teams? And what I did, I just broke down the training into from 250 slides down to 15, and trained everybody. We did that ourselves. So yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one to answer because there's different levels of restrainers, in the business, and you have to manage that appropriately within yours. But yeah, and again, it depends at what level you are in the organisation in terms of what you can do. But I think you've just got to keep influencing, selling, working with people, getting enough people trained up that they believe in it and want to deploy it. It's kind of a difficult one to answer without the specifics, really. But
yeah, for sure. And I mean, personality comes into that so much, because if you are confronting middle or senior management who's giving you an issue, they're all individuals, and there could be 100 different reasons why they don't want to do it. Anything from just being a bit of a negative person through to having tried lean before, or they've got another thing they want to do. There's so many different reasons, so it can be tricky. But you do need it. That middle management, so often I see a situation where the middle management comes to a meeting or some training, they nod their head, but you get out on the floor and you're trying to implement, and they're just not there. They're just not. They're not actually helping you, and it's a very difficult roadblock, because they fail the right teams, with the senior team. But then when the rubber has to hit the road, you're just not seeing the action. So it can be really tough to deal with. And I often think, maybe then, and to Joseph's question, if you do have that ability to light a fire with your frontline people, maybe if you can create that wave, it becomes a little inevitable for middle management. As we go along here, someone did ask, Jane mentioned the 9 guidelines. I popped a link to an Amazon link to the book in the chat section for everyone. So if you're interested in that book, you can buy it on Amazon. Anyway, moving right along, Jane, I'll let you keep going.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe some of the summary at the end might help to answer the questions, because sometimes my extreme view might not be appropriate for the person's business. So let's see if we get the answer at the end. So this was a great result for us. So we had some administrative error issues, and really a lot of it was to do with people not having that sacred time to focus and concentrate on that really critical point where we enter an order and we need to get it right. So you can see there, okay, you get some spikes in terms of the errors. You're always going to get some errors, but we had a 61% error reduction from this work that we did, and we're still on that trajectory to pretty much automotive standards. So that was another great result that we got from the project. So here's the summary really of how we plan for success. It's not textbook. It's just covering all of the things that we did. So obviously, back to the charter, we need clear expected results. They're key from the outset. It's so important, in my view, to train all the involved employees early so that they feel included and that they're not being told that this change is coming. It really doesn't take too much time. It's, you can spend an hour on it, or you can spend a day, whatever's appropriate for the business, but it's really critical to make sure that they feel included and understand the benefits to them. Take time to define the right project. Sometimes when you use Mr. Pareto, it can send you off in the wrong direction, so that's quite important. So we considered part family matrix, volume, Pareto, pound or dollar value, and cost of poor quality. So the results I've just shown, we may not have got to those if we'd used certain KPIs to drive which project we're working on. So we used a mix of results to look at that. And then consider any restraining forces, and that could be other projects that are coming in from the business. It could be, maybe it could even be people that need a separate session on it to make it clear this is going to happen. We want you involved. It's going to happen regardless. Goals have to be clear at the front end. They need to be measurable and aligned to the business strategy. And make sure that the charter is documented for the team so that they feel empowered. They know they don't have to ask at every stage gate if they can make a change. And make sure that the planning steps are documented at the front end. It's so important to spend and invest the time before you kick off a project. That would be one of the things I would say. And then obviously team profiling for me was quite critical. You need to have that stakeholder engagement and sponsorship. That's key to the success. Which is where training your leadership team and making sure they're involved is a good thing to do. But also allocate a results-driven leader with strong change management skills, and maybe that's sometimes where organisations struggle because they don't always pick the right leader who can drive some change through. When we work with Lean, we always say represent the process. My view is avoid just representing the process. So make sure that you do have a results-driven leader. You use a skilled and respected facilitator. We make sure that we include creative team players who don't just think, well, we've always done it that way, and also influential team members and managers as well. So people who, maybe at times they are a bit negative about change, bring them on board and try and get them to bring others in with them. And I guess the key as well is to just keep communicate. That's always a big deal when it comes to change management, to avoid people being nervous about, particularly when the words lean are used, it can make people nervous. So that's pretty key as well. So finally, PDCA, you plan, you implement. If it's not working, check the process, flick it back, change it, or adjust. That's really important. We often design for the future and then implement and don't always check back. We move on to something else. So PDCA is very important as well. So that's the content of the slides. So thank you for listening. I don't know if there's any more questions.
Yeah, so we've got a few questions, Jane. So you were just talking about the choosing a leader and the sort of skills you look for in that person. So Javier is asking, what are some of the traits that worked for your leader? So, and I guess maybe the easiest way to answer that is maybe think about one of the team leaders you did pick and think about that person and why you think they, what about them made them able to pull that off for you.
Yeah, I genuinely think you've got to be a results person. It's no good having a leader whose profile is merely to come up with good ideas and think things through. So they have to be results driven, and they have to understand about change management. And the key with change management is to communicate to people. And they're the two main things that I would suggest. You don't always have that mix in your business, but the point is really think carefully about who's on the team and who's leading the team at the front end. We just often dive into, we've got a problem, let's fix it, and we don't think about that team profile or the leader profile. So they have to be results driven, and they have to be a strong leader and able to influence and communicate. That would be the key thing for me.
Okay, and just while you're on it, Jane, could you back up one slide? We've got someone who wants to look at that previous slide for a little bit. Now, you guys, I would say actually one of the more impressive things you guys did was the sustainment of this thing. So, and someone's just asked about how you guarantee the sustainability. Obviously guarantee is a strong word, but we're several years down the track now, and I haven't seen you in a year. That's for sure. I haven't visited in a year or more. But how do you think what was most important to keeping this going?
I guess it's a cycle. You can't just do what we've said and then stop. It's a continuous cycle because you've always got you've got other change happening in the business. You've got new people. So we're in all honesty, we're at a stage now where we need to retrain because we've got new people in the business. So it's recognizing that it's not one job and then it's done. You've got to keep going with this cycle. And once you've got your journey outlined that fits with your business, and as much as on the journey I showed on the slide, there's a couple of areas that I would have done differently. The key is to keep your leadership engaged and focused as key stakeholders and sponsors, but just keep, make the training part of your induction plan for new people. Because
that's a good one.
It's like anything. Things will drop out if people don't continue to believe in them and buy into them. So it's absolutely a cycle. Get your journey identified to suit your business, and then keep working through that cycle, a bit like PDCA.
Yeah, just keep it going round and round and round.
Yes.
I think your point about induction is important because you get a little bit of turnover that could kill it very quickly.
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. So someone's asking a little bit about, this is Maria, asking about standardizing a process for lean leadership program development. So, I guess Maria's asking, how much time do you put into developing your lean leadership or getting people on board? Although maybe that's a little bit like your previous answer. Maybe that's more about consistently doing it. But what would you advise for getting your training and deploying the lean or the OpEx concepts to the leadership team?
Again, I guess it depends on the size of the business. And maybe that's a combination of my answer and your answer, Tim, because if your business structure is that part of your leadership team you have a lean coordinator or a lean manager, I think they should go on the extensive training program and then come back and train the trainer to others in the business. But it depends on your budget as well, I guess, on your company specific.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys, that's a good point too, train the trainer. You guys did a lot of your own training, and you having material and this material and the skills, I suppose, to just continually iterate that training in-house certainly probably is a step towards sustainability, because it's not expensive and it's not, people have to travel, and you can do it in-house. So that's a good thing to think about as well. I had another question that was a little bit more, I guess, cerebral, emailed in, Jane. So this is probably a less lean or OpEx kind of question, and it was something on the lines of, this is more about your career as a sales manager. If you had your time again, what would you do differently? Let's see if I can find it specifically, but basically, what would you do differently as a sales manager if you had your time again? Pretty broad.
Wow.
You might need a year to think about that one.
Yeah, I'd go back.
So hang on, I've got to. I want to do something else.
Yeah. What would I do again? I guess follow the. I mean, ours worked out really well. We got an award for changing the culture in terms of lean. It wasn't that we all became technical experts in lean. It was a culture change and getting people engaged and connected to change, following a set of guidelines. So, I would go back and I would create my journey in line with the business. So I would check back and say, okay, is it the right thing to train the leadership first? Is it the right thing to then do a train the trainer plan, or do we want to set aside a budget to get a consultant in, and just really make sure that plan is robust and make sure you've got the check back as well for the sustainable element. So yeah, I would. Yeah. As worked out quite well, but if I could go back again, it would be just to really dig deep and check back that is the right thing to do for our business.
Yeah, and there was something while you were talking there, and it was so evident. Excuse me. It was so evident with your people that you said they're not technical geniuses when it comes to lean or OpEx. But they knew what worked for them the whole time, and whenever you talk to them, they may not be able to put a name on something in lean terms, but they could tell you how it worked and how it helped them, and it meant they were doing it to make their work life and their work results better, which I think had a lot to do with sustainability. Now, we've got another good one. So coming back to, we had a little conversation a few minutes ago about, including training in your onboarding. So, you bring someone on and you give them a bit of OpEx training to make sure everyone's got that message. So Kyle sort of asked, do you go further upstream with this? And does HR, have you guys thought about having HR consider whether or not someone will fit within your OpEx framework? Like in the hiring process, are they thinking about whether or not this person can fit into your working environment based on operational excellence?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I believe that's the right thing to do at certain levels. I'm not sure I've answered the question there very well. Just say that.
Yeah, you have. You said yes.
Yeah.
I think he's basically asking, when HR employs someone, is one of the things they consider, will this person be able to work well in this environment of operational excellence? Will they fit with operational excellence? Is that something they consider when they hire, when they recruit, when they're interviewing?
I would say yes, that should be the case, but I mean the biggest deal for me is getting the passion, getting passionate people into your organisation and then steering that passion down the OpEx path, if that's what you want in your organisation. But it depends on, if you were recruiting for a lean manager, then absolutely, yes, that should be taken into account. For me, as you work through and cascade down the organisation, it's about passion to do a great job, and then you can train the rest.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, you're right. If they want to do a great job and they're keen, hopefully that will work within the framework you have. And again, your framework was pretty user-friendly and employee-friendly, so I just, hopefully anyone would want to be part of that.
Yeah.
We do have, we have a question from Jerry. I will ask it, but maybe Jerry should email you directly. But in your opinion, is it more efficient, preferable to engage an outside consultant to run major OpEx projects rather than utilising in-house talent? I'm going to have a go at that one first. I see that's a bit sensitive from our end because that's what we do. Jerry, I'd say my opinion is it depends on the organisation. Some organisations love having someone from the outside because some organisations have people who listen better to someone from the outside and it brings some more credibility to the project and maybe some skills you don't have. And then other organisations do really well on their own. Other organisations have leaders, managers, and people who can read about something or go off and learn about something and bring it back really effectively. So I think that there are organisations that do well with both. And I think, acknowledging the reality of your organisation is probably a good thing. If you're a team that can nail it on your own, then you should do that. If you're a team that you think would benefit from help, then finding the right kind of help could probably, benefit you. But I think it's just as many, it's 50-50 on that one from my end. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Jane. You certainly don't have to.
I would say that there was absolute value in bringing, specifically Tim into our organisation. It just makes it feel like you mean business to the people, and the people used to get excited about Tim coming in and seeing what work they've done, whereas at times, it's Bob, the lean manager, coming through again, and you didn't get that excitement. So I think if you can, to kick it off, it's great to have an expert come in, and then again, back to the journey, make sure that you've got a robust plan to continue and stabilise all the good work that you've done. That would be my view. So if you can, then yes.
And I was just going to say, the sustainment bit is always going to be, you can't have, even if you do decide to hire someone to help you, you can't, you probably don't want to be paying that person forever. So the sustainment piece part has got to be part of that initial, you've got to set it up to sustain, that's for sure. Jane, did you have any other thoughts? Anything else you want to share before we sign off? We've had a bunch of questions and I don't want to keep you all morning, but anything else you wanted to talk about before we roll?
No, just to say that this is one example. We've used the guidelines in many other areas and had even wider success. But without making sure you've got a clear path and the right people on these projects, you're never going to get the success whoever you bring in to do it. So it's all about the engagement, the clarity at the front end, and the engagement of your people. So yeah, I'd just say this is one example. It may seem relatively small, but there's many others that I could talk about, much bigger, that all have improved the overall experience. So yeah, no, I've got nothing else unless there's any more questions.
I think we've worked through most of the questions. There were some that were a little bit software specific, so I don't really want to go into that. But because Jane, by the way, everyone, Jane didn't use software for any of this particularly, so it was all pretty visual and maybe Excel and stuff, but certainly nothing too fancy. Now, I will say, if anyone has any more questions for Jane or wants to get in touch with her, you can, you might be able to find her on LinkedIn. If you contact me, either at, which is thehealey@instituteopex.org, which is THEALEY, or alternatively, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I can connect you with Jane. We're just a bit wary of giving out her address and her getting 300 emails. So I will filter them for her. So if you want to chat to Jane, just get in touch with her through the Institute and we'll connect you with her without an issue. And so we'll have another one of these in a month. And Jane, thanks for coming on and sharing all that work. It was a really great project. Everyone, it was such a great team to work with, and you know, you guys won that award for a reason, that's for sure. And, you know, thanks for taking an hour out of your day to come and chat with us.
No problem.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. We will chat to you next month.